NJ Brown writes, I don't scrap chronologically, but I tend to be task-oriented. So I will grab all the beach vacation photos from 2012, for example, and scrap those exclusively until I've completed all those pages. But new stories are always happening while I focus on my topic of the moment. Ideas pop into my head for titles, or supplies, or how I want to tell these stories. How do you balance your scrapping time between older stories and new stories taking place now? Glitter Girl, can you help NJ Brown find harmony for happy scrapping?
Of course I can. The first thing I want to say straight away is that whatever inspires you to scrap, be it current photos or old photos, just go with whatever you enjoy, and don't feel like there's some sort of rule that you have to get a certain number of photographs scrapbooked, or that you have to do things in a certain order, or that you have to have any album complete. And please keep in mind that it's definitely up to you what you work on and when you work on it. So there's no right or wrong way to scrapbook modern photos and older memories. I'm going to show you today something that works for me sometimes, and that's when I assemble a bunch of supplies that end up being more than I would particularly need for just one page. So I have a lot of pattern paper here that I've pulled out because I like how it looks together, and then I've added quite a few embellishments, and I have 2 alphabets. So it's quite an extensive kit of supplies. There's definitely room here for me to make 2 full 12 by 12 pages. So I'm going to use this, 1 with a set of modern photos and 2 with a set of older photos that have a story I want to tell. So I have 2 4x6 photos that are very recent, and then I have 2 photos, one that I'm going to crop down to a square and 1 4x6 that are older photos that I really want to tell a specific story rather than focus mostly on the images. I'm going to go with the newer photos first and then go to the second one. I'm using lots of teal, pink, and peach, and I'm getting this color inspiration because I've been dipping back into the Through the Kaleidoscope class, which is a workshop by Amy Heller, available here at 2 Peas in a Bucket. And one of the things, well, everything she talks about is based on the color wheel and lots of different color theory that's broken down really well for you to understand with scrapbooking supplies. But one thing that has been playing on my mind recently is that so many of the current supplies, they really feature pink and turquoise, and you've seen it in my layouts all the time. I love the combination, but I'm very conscious of just how much I could really just sit on pink and turquoise right now, because it's literally everywhere in every collection. So I took a minute to go back and read a few of Amy's prompts and look at some of her example pages, and remembered something that she talked about with tertiary colors, and that's to look at these in-between colors and how they're always going to be really popular in trends. So if you have a look at a color wheel, you'll see things like turquoise and magenta are these colors that come in between the primary and the secondary colors, and they're the colors that come up a lot in trend, in decor, in fashion, and of course in scrapbooking. And she has some great ideas for being able to customize those combinations, and one of the combinations that she used was to add peach in with pink, so that there's this more orange or yellow based tone. And it's something that I hadn't really thought of, and then when I started pulling the supplies together, lo and behold, it worked really well. So I love this combination, and there's some newer stuff and some older stuff in here. So I'll just take you through it as I use it, but I just thought I would share the inspiration from that in case you have taken that workshop and you might want to dive back in, or you could always check it out if you haven't already. So I'm going to start with a pink striped background sheet, and this is from Pink Paisley's new collection, and the other side is this distressed, more subtle pattern, and this is called Cottage Farms, and I'm going to use the pink and off-white stripe as my 12 by 12 background for my current photo. To create this first page, I'm going to anchor everything with a vertical strip of the multicolored pattern paper. It has both the peachy tone to it and the aqua, so I know that this pattern will bring everything in my design together, and it has a little bit of all the different elements that I'm going to incorporate it. And then I've added a strip of the reverse of this side, which is going to be a perfect match. It's that same aqua that's here in this hexagon from the pattern, and it's just on a larger scale, and I've placed it so that it will repeat the same direction of the angled line at the edge. They don't line up perfectly, and they don't need to, but this way they're nice complementary design where they're not fighting against each other, they're both working in the same direction. From there, I want to work on an L-shaped design, so I'm going to add a box across the bottom. And I wanted to bring in both of those colors, but with different papers than I've used so far. So this plaid in the background is orange, peach, and pink, and it's by Studio Calico in the Here and There collection. It's called Charlotte. And then this cloud print is that lovely Maggie Holmes from Crate Paper print. But this is a 4 by 10 box here, the cloud paper, and then this is half an inch bigger to mat it. And if I place this in the L shape, then I've got a little bit too much room on this side. What I want to do is move this over here, but then I've got an awful lot of lines going on here that are a little busy. So what I've been doing lately is using a lot of 6 by 6 papers cut in half to have a 3 by 6 block. This one is a peach floral from Lawn Fawn in one of their recent 6 by 6 paper packs. And placing this 3 by 6 box over to the side of my, the base of my L is going to give me a nice spot to anchor my title and all the other embellishment that I'm going to put with this. And it just kind of gives a nice shot of color in the corner there. And lets me use a few more patterns without having to figure out what different shapes and elements they should be. The 3 by 6 is just a really easy size to cut. So then I'm going to add my photographs. I have two 4 by 6 landscape photos, and I've matted them both on that B side of the multicolored paper, so there's just this little bit of aqua going around the edge. And from here I can have a look at the different places that I might want the photos to go. So I could place them here, and in truth, if the photos were of the girls facing the other direction, I think I probably would stick with the placement here, because I love how this corner lines up with all those nice square edges showing all the different patterns. But because all of their faces are going that way, it's really leading your eye off the page, and it's making this side of the page a little bit uneven. Now I could have fixed that by taking my L to the other side, but I didn't, and I'm not going to worry about that now. Instead, I'm thinking that I'll have the photos to the other side and I can have my journaling here. It might mean that it's the perfect spot to have a vellum journaling box here if I have lots of journaling that I want in a long column. Or I can contain the journaling to an amount of space that's going to take up something similar to this amount of room. Pages like this are exactly why I like to have a variety of sizes of journaling cards, and indeed shapes, to hand, so that I can fill awkward boxes like this when one card doesn't seem to fit the right job. So I have two that I'm going to use in this space, and because they're different widths, I'm just going to be tucking them underneath this edge so that it won't be so obvious that they are a different width. And it's fine that they're a different height. I like that variety. These are both from Ellie's Studio, and then I'm also going to use a circular one up here on the other side as a little bit of an accent. Now, when I started to think about circle accents, I wondered if that would be too much because of the hexagon shape that's already included. So I thought I would cut out one of the hexagons from an offcut of this pattern paper that I'm not going to use, and that way I can combine the hexagon shape with the circle and have something that's a little bit less conflicting with the designs that are already on the page. So I can use this die cut with some pop dots, and I'm thinking that I'll put a number on top of this so that I can have a number 3 up here. It was funny, when I started looking through my die cuts and things, a lot of die cuts come with the number 2, but not many with 3, and there were 3 people in the picture, so I just figured it would be easier to take the number from the same letter stickers that I'm using. Okay, so here I have this little square that's left empty where I have this pattern paper, but then I chose to move the photos over here. So I'm going to start there and cover up that gap. And then before I stick that one down completely, I want to pop this second card in because it's more narrow. That way I can move this card until I get it in line. So this gives me my room for journaling, and with this particular page I don't have enough to fill a long tall column. This will be plenty for what I want to write, so I'm going to go with this shorter option. But if these photos and this page design came together with something that had a lot longer journaling that I wanted to write, I would use probably a vellum, possibly a transparency, or something that I could lay over the top of all this without completely covering up this pattern, and use that to hold my writing in this space. Now I want to add something below here for my title, and that's where this last floral is going to come in from October Afternoon. I really want to get the placement right because I don't want to cover up all of that gorgeous cloud print, but I want my title on this horizontal piece rather than the clouds. So I can pull it up a little bit here, and that will leave more of the clouds visible. And from there, I can bring in my letter stickers. I have some smaller letter stickers from October Afternoon, the mini market letters, and then a larger alphabet. This is Amy Tangerine in the Goodness font, and this, it's called pink, but it is a very peachy pink, kind of like a ballet shoe pink, if you identify with that color. And so it will work really well with all these papers that include both the pink and the orange in this kind of combination. It's also quite a soft mottled color. It doesn't look like the color has just been completely washed on. There's more a look of texture about the color, almost like it was watercolor paper, but of course they're just the normal chipboard finish. So I think this will work to spell out my title here below the photo with the combination of the two letter stickers, and I'll get my journaling in place so that then I can look at finishing the embellishment. The only thing that worked a little differently than what I was envisaging was that I didn't have the right letters to make any title that I could think of work with the aqua letter stickers, so I had to bring in some pink instead. But then I made it, it all fit, I had all the right letters from there. So then I'm on to my embellishment, and you've often seen me take washi tape and put it in 3 places on a layout to then kind of mark out the space that I'm going to use for embellishment. This time, instead of using washi tape, I used some label stickers. These are from Crate Paper, and they have a variety of different words, and I just chose 3 different stickers and placed them in 3 different spots on the layout. And again, you can see that these form a triangle with all the important stuff on the page in between. And from there, I'm just going to add a little bit of embellishment to each of those, and it's all going to match. I decided it's been a while since I pulled out my trusty butterfly punch, so I'm going to start with that, and I used some of the offcut of this pattern paper to punch 3 little music note butterflies. And I'll just put a pop dot under one side of each of them, and then place them next to the word stickers. And that way you can kind of fold them up and get a little bit more dimension. And I'm looking at the edges, trying to find places where I can layer them in so that I don't end up with awkward little pieces showing out the other side. So I place this here rather than kind of here where I end up with awkward space. It's hard to, they're so small that it's hard to go wrong, but the kind of space I'm trying to avoid is if I place it somewhere like here where I end up with that corner in between the 2 top wings of the butterfly. So better for me to place it here and cover up that whole side there. Then I'm looking for something small and a little change of the shape and size. So I've pulled up some enamel dots, and I'm just going to use the small one. Well, it's not the smallest, it's the second smallest size, in the middle of each butterfly. And another thing that came to mind when I was looking back through my notes from the Through the Kaleidoscope class is that Amy talks a lot about being able to identify the blues in an aqua versus the greens in an aqua and using them separately, that there's plenty of supplies out there to use them separately. So this time I didn't have a true turquoise in my enamel dot collection, but I had this blue, and because these aqua shades are more toward the blue than the green, then that works out well to highlight that color. It's looking like each of these needs just a little bit of something else, and I've already included some blue, so it would be nice to give it a little bit of pink or peach. And I wanted this layout because it's the 3 girls having babies. I wanted the idea of the pink and the blue because it's not a known entity yet. So I want something different in with that. So I think this Heidi Swapp Mist, which is the primrose color, will be a good addition to each of these. It's a pink, but it's toward the peachy side, so that's going to help with the colors that I've chosen. And I'll just go around each of these, and for this one, just take something so that I can cover up the photo so I don't get it on their faces. And that's where I'm going to call my first layout finished with my modern photos. But I still have plenty of paper left over from what I pulled out to make this page. So that means that I can take another set of photos and this time focus on something a little bit older. And I can still use the same papers but come up with a very different page design. And they won't go in the same album. And that way, even if I normally would pull out all of the supplies and maybe power through a set of photos. For example, when you work on a whole album and you have one set of photos, maybe you have 100 shots and you want to scrap them all with one set of supplies. I tend to go toward this sort of element of mixing up the papers that are going to appear within my album, but I don't mind if there are different things that appear in different books, and it helps to keep that kind of mixed up look working. So I'm going to see what I can come up with everything that I still have left. Instead of putting things away, I'm going to go ahead and scrapbook an older memory. So now, once I have one page done, I have all my supplies here ready to go to make a second layout so that I can jump to an older memory that I've been wanting to get in my album. I have 2 photos for that, and one of them I've put behind this die-cut card that comes in an ephemera pack from Glitz Design. And the only thing that you really have to keep in mind is that you'll need another full 12 by 12 sheet for your background or whatever page size you're using. But everything else, I'm going to be using the scraps of the papers that I had left over and the different elements that I pulled out that I hadn't used. And I've just cut them into nice boxes instead of awkward shapes where if something was kind of an L shape where I've used the corner. I just cut them into nicer rectangles and squares. And then I can start creating a second layout, and I don't have to go back and shop for my supplies again. I can use the same things that I already have on hand. Now, the original poster of this question did mention that she tends to break out one set of supplies and then use it for one longer project, so not one layout at a time, but maybe all of her vacation photos stacked up. So in addition to this idea of using a page kit for more than one page, I would also keep in mind that if you find while you're working on one layout you have ideas for another, then create something that's really simple and will work with the way that you scrapbook wherever your space is. If you're working at something where you're always in the same place and you don't need to pack away, or if you're working in a small space where you unpack your supplies every day and sit at the table or something. And just come up with a way that you would be able to quickly take notes when something comes to mind and write it down so that you'll have everything ready for you when you do want to get back to whatever topic has just come to mind. So in my case, I'm always scrapbooking at the same table unless I've gone to scrapbook with friends or something similar. And I always end up with a big stack of the strips at the bottom of a paper like this. I always have these next to me right where I'm working because it's what ends up next to my trimmer. I find that I use these all the time to take notes really quickly. I grab some washi tape because I normally have washi tape on my table or at least within arm's reach. And then I have a wall that's just out of the shot here where I tape them all. And that gives me a visual cue to go back and scrapbook those things that had come to mind that while I was working, and I wanted to make sure that I didn't forget. And that just works really well for me, but I think the idea is that you just need a system that will work for you and the way you scrap in your space. It might be a notebook, it might be a whiteboard, anything where it might be your phone and you open a little a note-taking app and you just write something down really quickly because you already have your phone or your iPad or your laptop or whatever it is that is near you when you're scrapbooking. And just use whatever is going to work well with what you already tend to have around you. And then take those notes in a conspicuous way, some way that you will be able to see it. The next time you come into your scrapbooking space, you'll be able to see what you had noted down, and that idea won't be disappearing into the ether because you've carried on working on your layout. That way, you just have this kind of ongoing list of ideas, and it will come in really useful for days when you aren't quite as inspired and you're a little bit more stuck and aren't quite sure where you should start. It will be right there ready for you. So I've just taken all these scraps and piled them up into a tall column here. And I'm going to run my title across here, and I want to be able to include quite a lot of journaling. So I've used the 2 planar patterns here so that I'll be able to write right over the top of them. And then I'm going to have a few short notes plus my embellishment here as well. So grab my thickers, and because this is going to be one long word all the way across the top, I'll spell it from the end so that I make sure that I get the ending spot in the right place. I want it to line up with the edge of this photo. And I don't really mind where it starts, it's just that I want it to end in the right spot, so that's why I'm spelling in reverse. I often find that when I'm doing 2 pages from a single page kit, the second page kit, because it's going to have the scraps and smaller pieces of paper, works best for the design that will include longer journaling. So this definitely worked out that way, where I have everything that's photo and paper stacked up on one side, and that gives me plenty of room to write on the other side of the page. Now I'm ready for some embellishment, and one of the things that I wanted to embellish is something that may or may not work for the photos that you are using for something with this design, and that is that I have a random person in this photo, and I really want your eye to go toward the sign and the dome here and the clock. I don't want it to look as though this person is important to the story in this case, especially because in this photo the people here are important to this story and they're very small in the photo. So it might not be a huge leap of logic to think that a small person in the picture up here would be important as well. So I'm going to go ahead and use this space here for some embellishment. I'm just going to use one of these banner stickers from Dear Lizzie Lucky Charm. And I didn't place this before I put my journaling in, so I'll just have to be mindful of where the journaling lands on this side. And then I can add that right over the top. Now, of course, if this were a one-of-a-kind photo, if there was something that I didn't want to cover, if there wasn't a purposeful reason for me to be adding things on top, I wouldn't be covering up so much of the photo. And I know many scrapbookers have a style that you would never cover up the photos. So please don't think that that's a rule that you have to follow. It just happens to work well with my design and what I want to achieve with this story. I also wanted to add, because I'm focusing the journaling and the photos here are focusing on location, I wanted to use a geotag embellishment, and that's a flare badge from Studio Calico's Sundrifter line. So it goes well with this idea here in the banner that says, "This is my happy place." And the journaling on this page is all about how these photos, the 2 photos, are about visiting this particular place as sightseers many, many years prior, without ever realizing that this would indeed be the neighborhood that I would come to live in and call home. So it's just a different perspective on remembering that one day of seeing things and how it's a little bit different over time now that that's quite a normal daily thing that I see all the time. So that's where I want to start the embellishment, which means I then want to add a little bit more to pull it all together. I have this space to work with here. So that's leading me to try something that is basically the same thing as a triangle, but because everything is in this column, I want to try something that won't strike you straight away as a triangle, but more as a zigzag line. So I have one embellishment here, and I'm going to place one down here, so I'm going to bring one up here to the top. That's still a triangle. It's a triangle pointing toward the journaling, but I think sometimes we get into a mindset where we're looking for this particularly wide triangle that goes all the way across the page, and it's certainly okay for placements to be closer together to deal with just part of the page instead of the whole thing. So I'm going to add a little bit of embellishment here along with a few more words in this postcard bit here. And then a little bit up here at the top. I need to get the date and some other basic details included. And I'd really like to bring in a shot of this more bold turquoise, and that's from the My Mind's Eye collectible range. But they do these little word stickers now in all different colors, and each sheet has a different kind of theme to the words, but a lot of them are useful for all sorts of different things. So I'm going to try to use that in the embellishment. One final benefit of scrapbooking with this process is that you don't need to reinvent the wheel for your embellishments. I use that same concept of starting each embellishment with a word sticker, even though I used a different color this time from My Mind's Eye instead of the cream and pink from crepe paper. And then I used the same butterfly punch. I topped it with an enamel dot, and I used that same Heidi Swap mist with each one because I knew that all of those colors were going to work together because I've already used them on one page. I did change it up a little bit by adding in some sewing thread and cutting some scraps of pattern paper in instead of using larger stickers for each placement. But the knowledge that you have once you've completed one layout with a set of supplies means that you can look at it and find out if there's anything that you particularly like or dislike about the first page that you made, and you can take that knowledge forward into the second page because you're working with the exact same supplies. So if there's something that you really love, you can do it again. If there's something that didn't quite work, you know to avoid it. And that will help you come together with 2 pages from one page kit really quickly. So your challenge this week is to assemble a page kit that you think will work for 2 pages, and maybe try this idea of using one set of modern photos and one set of an older memory, but that's not a hard and fast requirement. If it would work better for you to just do 2 memories from any one particular time, that's absolutely fine too. But give this working process a try and see how it works for the way you scrapbook. See if it helps you maybe work a little bit faster on the second page, or if you discover it's really not the process for you and you'd prefer to have the variety in the second page kit. I wish you lots of happy scrapping and a little bit of learning about your creative process this week. Thanks for watching.
Join us next week for the continuing adventures of Glitter Girl and the ongoing mystery of the scrapbooker behind the mask at 2peasinabucket.com.